the scene in Cordova. Our crews have seen FBI and TBI agents going in and out of that house. The Shelby County Assessor's website lists this house as being owned by Lontrell Williams. That is the name of both Pooh Shiesty and his father. The rap star is in a halfway house right now after being released from federal.
At 6 a.m. on April 1st, 2026, the FBI launched a high-intensity raid on Pooh Shiesty's family home in Cordova, Tennessee. This wasn't a routine visit or a simple welfare check by local Memphis police. Federal agents arrived before dawn, deployed flashbang grenades, and swarmed the property to execute both search and arrest warrants. The most critical detail here is that the residence is registered under the name Lontrell Williams, a name shared by both Pooh Shiesty and his father. This leaves everyone wondering who was the actual target of this operation and what triggered it. When you factor in the events of the last few months, the social media tension, the issues with his parole officer, and the public snitch allegations Pooh was defending himself against, while still under federal supervision, the situation becomes far more complex than a standard raid. There are several different reasons why the feds might have shown up this morning, and regardless of the specific cause, every single one of them points towards serious legal trouble. You need to hear this, so let me break it all down for you. To truly grasp why this raid is such a serious deal, you have to understand who Pooh Shiesty is and the kind of heat he was already facing before the feds ever stepped foot on that property this morning. Born Lontrell Donnell Williams Jr. in Memphis, Tennessee, Pooh Shiesty's rise to fame was incredibly fast. One of the most explosive rap careers we've seen in recent memory. After signing to Gucci Mane's 1017 Records, he released Back in Blood, which became a multi-platinum hit, peaked at number 13 on the Billboard Hot 100, and turned into one of the most iconic rap tracks of the decade. When he dropped his debut mixtape, Shiesty Season, in February 2021, the streets went crazy. He was everywhere. But almost as quickly as he rose to the top, the feds came knocking. His legal troubles originally trace back to October 2020 in Bay Harbor Islands, Florida. What began as an alleged transaction for marijuana, codeine, and sneakers reportedly turned into a shooting. A member of Pooh's crew allegedly pulled a weapon and assaulted 2 victims, and Pooh was implicated in the entire situation. That same year, back in Memphis, he was sitting in a car when someone else inside opened fire at a gas station. Fast forward to May 2021, and he was facing accusations of assaulting someone with a gun at the King of Diamonds strip club in Miami, an incident where $40,000 reportedly fell out of his lap during the scuffle. Eventually, federal authorities took over the case. And when the feds get involved, the stakes change completely. He was hit with an indictment covering conspiracy to possess firearms in furtherance of violent crimes, Hobbs Act robbery conspiracy, and discharging a weapon during a crime of violence. He was looking at a legitimate possibility of life in prison. That's not just talk. That's actually what he was facing. In January 2022, he decided to take a plea deal, pleading guilty to conspiring to possess firearms for violent crimes and drug trafficking. Because of that deal, prosecutors dropped 3 other charges, including the specific count that carried a life sentence. In April 2022, he was sentenced to 63 months, 5 years and 3 months in federal prison. Fast forward 3 years to October 2025, and he was walking out early, thanks to a combination of good behavior and time served credits. His lawyer spoke with Memphis News Network WMC, making it clear he was ready to refocus on his music. For a moment, it really seemed like the comeback was in full swing. He released FDO, First Day Out, which climbed all the way to number 12 on the Hot 100 in January 2026. He even earned the title of Billboard's first hip-hop rookie of the month. He was officially back, the industry was behind him, and the fans were fully invested, until everything changed this morning. But here is the part that people are overlooking, and it's where things get complicated. When he left that Pennsylvania federal prison in October 2025, he wasn't entirely a free man. Many people aren't familiar with how the federal system operates, so here is the breakdown. He was placed into a residential re-entry management program under supervised release. The Federal Bureau of Prisons had him assigned to the RM Dallas field office, with a final release date set for April 11, 2026. While that isn't the same as being behind bars, RM Dallas is a federal office that manages halfway houses and home confinement programs throughout the region. In practical terms, here's what that actually meant for him. Technically, you are still the property of the federal government. There are rules, strict restrictions, and a supervision officer watching your every move. If you violate the terms of that supervision, even for something that seems minor, they can bring you back into custody in the blink of an eye. Usually, being enrolled in a program like that means you aren't allowed to travel out of state. He was supposed to be in Dallas, yet the house that was raided this morning is located in Cordova, Tennessee. That's Memphis, a completely different state. This is where you need to pay close attention, because the dots are starting to connect. Despite being under federal supervision and restricted to Dallas, he remained active on social media, posting about being out and about and even shooting music videos. It wasn't a secret, it was all public for the world to see, but the social media situation goes much deeper than just a few posts. In late 2025, he appeared on a live stream with his close associate Ben Dunn. Right in the middle of the stream, his parole officer reportedly called him and reprimanded him for not being home. That clip went viral instantly, sparking jokes, memes, and predictions that he was headed for a violation. At the time, however, nothing official seemed to come of it, and no violation was publicly filed. But the feds don't need to file paperwork for you to realize they're watching. When you go viral because your parole officer calls you during a live stream, you've made yourself a target for every level of federal supervision. That is the last place you want to be when your official release date is still months away. But wait, it gets even worse. There is one detail that might be the most important factor of all, and I don't think people have connected it to this raid yet. Just days before the raid took place, Pooh Shiesty went on social media to address something serious: allegations that he snitched during his federal gun case. In the hip-hop world, those kinds of rumors can follow a person forever, and he clearly felt the need to set the record straight publicly. To do that, he recorded a video of himself going through his actual indictment paperwork on camera for the world to see. He captioned it, "Traumatized. They don't know the half." In the video, he claimed that authorities piled on more charges thinking it would break them, but insisted they remained some of the most solid individuals you'll ever see mentioned on a piece of paper. Now, really think about this for a second. You are a man who is still under federal supervised release, meaning you haven't been fully discharged from the federal system yet. Your release date is April 11th. That date hasn't even arrived yet, and you are on social media publicly discussing your federal case and your co-defendants, broadcasting it to millions of people. That is not the move you make if you're trying to stay under the radar. It's the kind of move that prompts a supervision officer to pick up the phone and gets prosecutors to start paying attention. Anything you say publicly or post online becomes part of the record. They don't even need a warrant for your Instagram when you've posted it yourself. Now, just days after that video went up, the FBI is at your family's home with flashbangs at 6 in the morning. I'm not saying that video was definitely the direct cause, but given the timing, you can't tell me it's just a coincidence. This is where people need to start connecting the dots, because the raid raises more questions than it answers. One of the biggest questions is, was he even the primary target? Let's look at this like a detective, because the details matter. The home is a 4-bedroom, 3.5-bath property in Cordova, a suburb of Memphis. It was purchased in April 2023 for $656,500. According to the Shelby County Assessor's website, the property is listed under the name Lantrell Donnell Williams, a name shared by both the rapper and his father, Lantrell Williams Sr. That is not a minor detail. That could potentially be the entire story. Think about it from the perspective of the federal government. If you are investigating the father, Lantrell Williams Sr., for any reason, and the home is registered under that shared name, you go to that address. The warrant says Lantrell Williams, which doesn't necessarily mean you're there for the rapper. It's possible the father caught a case, or perhaps financial activity tied to that address triggered an investigation. The property itself might have become the focal point for something the father was involved in. Here is what makes this even more complicated. He was supposed to be in Dallas. If the FBI were coming specifically for him and knew he was under re-entry supervision in Dallas, why would they execute the warrant at a house in Memphis? Either they had reason to believe he was there when he wasn't supposed to be, which is a violation in itself, or the warrant wasn't primarily about him at all. It was about that specific address and whoever in that household is connected to the investigation. We also have to seriously consider the re-entry violation angle. Federal records show he was supposed to be in Dallas until April 11th. If he was physically inside that Memphis house, and keep in mind, the FBI doesn't show up with flashbangs at 6 a.m. unless they expect people to be inside, then his presence there alone could trigger a major violation of his supervised release. That's even before we get into the actual substance of the investigation. A supervised release violation on a federal firearms conviction is serious business. They can send you straight back to serve the remainder of your original sentence and even stack new time on top of it. There's also an angle that deserves a lot more attention: his online activity. When you're on federal supervised release, you aren't living the life of a private citizen. Your supervision officer has access to everything. Your social media is monitored, your location is tracked, and your communications are under a microscope. When he posted that video going through his indictment paperwork and publicly discussing his co-defendants, while still under federal supervision, that wasn't just a social media moment. Depending on what was said, it could be seen as an evidentiary issue. It could be framed as witness tampering, a violation of his supervision terms, or it might have simply flagged his case for renewed scrutiny from prosecutors. The internet moves fast and forgets even faster, but the federal government does neither. So where does that leave us? Let's keep it 100. As of this morning, there has been no official confirmation regarding who was actually arrested. The FBI has only confirmed that they executed both a search warrant and an arrest warrant at the property. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation worked alongside federal agents throughout the operation. Flashbangs were deployed and agents were seen moving in and out of the home for hours. Despite all of this, neither he nor his family has released a public statement. His team is silent. 1017 Records is silent, and his lawyer hasn't said a word. No one has even confirmed if he was actually in the house when the agents moved in. That silence speaks volumes. Usually when there's a simple misunderstanding, like back in January 2026 when social media went into a frenzy claiming he'd been rearrested, people speak up immediately to set the record straight. Back then, his label contacted outlets directly. DJ Academics provided clarification, and he even commented publicly himself to confirm he wasn't in jail. That entire situation was resolved within a single news cycle because the answer was straightforward and his team could explain it. This time, it's crickets. No statements, no clarifications, and no, it's not what it looks like from his management. This is a completely different energy than what we saw in January. That shift suggests one of two things. Either the situation is so genuinely complicated that they can't easily explain it away, or the legal exposure is so serious that his attorneys have ordered everyone to stay quiet. When lawyers tell you to say nothing, you say nothing. And we need to talk about the timing one more time because this part is truly shocking. His full release from federal supervision was set for April 11, 2026. Today is April 1st. That is a 10-day window, just 10 days away from being completely finished with the federal government, the supervision, and the constant check-ins. Then the FBI shows up with flashbangs and a federal arrest warrant. Think about the weight of that. After the plea deal, 3+ years in a Pennsylvania federal prison, the re-entry program and the supervised release, he was 10 days from the finish line. He was less than 2 weeks away from living his life without a federal officer watching his every move. And now we're looking at a situation where he could potentially go back in. The hip-hop community is already reacting, and the streets are talking. Social media has been on fire since the news broke this morning, with people debating whether he was targeted, if his social media posts played a role, or if this is actually about his father. Many are even questioning if the feds ever truly intended to let him walk free without taking another look at him. There's also a massive irony here. The song he dropped to celebrate his release, FDO, First Day Out, peaked at number 12 on the Hot 100. The record was literally titled First Day Out, and now people online are already joking about whether FDO Part 2 inches is on the way. Except this time, nobody is laughing like they were back in January, because this time it involves real federal agents, a real address, and a real warrant. Let's zoom out for a moment because this situation is bigger than just one artist. This is a pattern, and if you follow hip-hop culture seriously, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The most important takeaway here is that the federal government does not forget. Local and state cases can be dropped, resolved, or handled in ways that allow people to move on. But when the feds get involved in your life, they don't just close a file and walk away. They build files. They maintain surveillance. They watch social media and track your movements. They monitor your communications, and the moment someone on their radar makes a mistake, or what they perceive as one, they move. For him, the red flags were stacking up in plain sight. The viral phone call from his parole officer, the social media posts showing him out of state when he was supposed to be in Dallas, and that public video addressing his co-defendants and his federal case. Individually, none of those things might bring a person down, but when you put them all together on the record and make them public while still under federal supervision, it creates a serious problem. That is a profile being built in real time. The feds are patient. They wait and they watch. Then, one morning at 6 a.m., they pull up with flashbangs. Then there is the question regarding his father. To be very clear, I'm not accusing Lantrell Williams Sr. of anything, because we simply don't have those facts yet. However, the fact that the feds obtained a warrant for a property registered under a shared family name, and that we still don't know who the actual target of that arrest warrant is, opens up a conversation that can't be ignored. It is entirely possible that Pooh's father has been under some form of investigation that has nothing to do with Pooh directly, and Pooh just happened to be connected to that address. If that's the case, it's a completely different kind of tragedy. A man does his time, comes home, tries to rebuild his life, and then gets swept up because of what is happening in his father's orbit. We've seen this play out before. We've seen family members become collateral in federal investigations, and we've seen shared addresses turn into shared legal exposure. When the government executes a warrant at a family home, everyone in the household becomes relevant to the investigation, whether they were the original target or not. This situation highlights something the culture needs to start discussing more honestly. The post-release vulnerability for artists with federal cases is a reality we need to address. When you come home from a federal bid, you aren't free in the traditional sense. You are living under a microscope. Every public move you make, especially on social media, is being watched by people whose entire job is to find a reason to bring you back in. The temptation to reclaim your identity, speak on your situation, address rumors, and show the world you're thriving is completely human. However, that same temptation is often exactly what leads to someone being sent back. Pooh Shiesty had everything to lose, and it's arguable whether he acted like it. Or perhaps he was moving carefully, and something larger than him simply caught him up regardless. We don't have all the answers yet, but here is what we do know. Just 10 days before his federal supervision was set to end, the FBI arrived at his family home in the dark with flashbangs and federal warrants. That isn't a situation you walk away from easily. And it's not something a lawyer can fix with a quick tweet. This is serious, and it is real. Depending on what surfaced over the next 24 to 48 hours, whether this involves his case, his father's case, a supervision violation, a new investigation, or a combination of all the above, Pooh Shiesty's future, both in music and his freedom, is genuinely uncertain right now. You already know I'll be on this story the second more information drops. The moment we get confirmation on who was arrested, what the charges are, and whether he is in custody, I'll be breaking it down immediately. Make sure you're subscribed and hit the notification bell, because this is only the beginning. Drop a comment below. Do you think this is about him directly, or could his dad be the real target here? And do you think posting that video of his indictment papers while still under federal supervision played a role in bringing the heat back? I want to hear your thoughts. Stay locked in. This isn't over. Not even close.